This panel will trace the journey of courtesans from live performers to recording artists and examine their astounding musical legacy and influence. On this panel, we will have archivist and historian A.N. Sharma, author of Drama Queens Vijay Sai, and our moderator for this panel will be historian and music scholar Kushal Gopalka.
Sharma ji, Vijay ji, it's an honor to be here sharing the days with you. I'm just going to be the instigator, and I'm just going to perform my duty by asking you and triggering questions. So we've been talking about Tawaiffs right since morning, and since you're from the south, Vijay ji, can you make out the line of demarcation between Tawaiffs and Devdasis? Because people are a little confused whether Devdasis are Tawaiffs and whether Tawaiffs are Devdasis. Is the mic working? You need to speak into it. Can you hear him? Yeah. Can somebody get this mic, please?
Hello.
Sharma ji, your mic.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, you can start with that.
Hello, hello. Am I audible?
Yeah, he's getting straight down to business.
Yeah. Thank you, and thank you for this Tehzeeb-e-Tawaif seminar. Coming from the south, there is a very clear demarcation. There was a lot of difference between Devadasis and Tawaiffs. Devadasi as such, going by the recent etymology of the word Deva and Dasi, somebody who was dedicated to a temple, somebody who was dedicated, a dancer dedicated to a temple, as a long-standing tradition of performance practitioners in South, in all the ancient temples. If you go back to the Brihadishwara temple in Tanjavur, which is over 1,000 years old, on the walls are inscriptions of names of hundreds of Devadasis who were all dedicated by Rajaraja Chola. So they had a very specific role in the society, not just dancing and singing. They were a part of the temple ritual traditions. They were a part of the Kainkaryams. Kainkaryam is a Sanskrit word, not a South Indian word. Kainkarya, which you offered a Sangeeta Seva. You offered a Nritya Seva to the god inside. And they were called Nitya Sumangalis. That was their original name, because they were eternally auspicious, having been wedded to God. And having them around in all the most important events was extremely important for the temple to function. And yes, it was a temple-run economy at that time. Temples were the heart of the larger way the society functioned. And these Devadasis had a very, very strong presence. And even till today, you can go back to some of the ancient temples in Tamil Nadu, Andhra, Karnataka, and you will find hundreds of names of hundreds of these Dasis who were there. So they did not come purely from a function of just being entertainment artists. You know, they were not just singing romantic songs and so on and so forth. They had far more than that. And that is one of the biggest differences that you find between the Dasi and the Tawaif of the north.
Right. So I think it makes it very interesting, because when we're going to be talking about Tawaifs and the entertainment and the culture provided by the Tawaifs, we would be largely including the contributions of the Devdasis also. So here is the male gaze on a very female subject, that is Tawaif. So we're all three males here. Sharma ji, would you like to talk about what the cultural ambience was in India before the onset of the recording industry coming in?
See, first I'll start with one sharing of information to all of you, that most of our studies on Tawaif or Nach girls, which has been told to you, is based on certain written texts. But very few of us know here that the era that we are talking, that is the colonial era, and when this recording started, somebody who was born, say, in 1850, and by 1905, 1910, if he or she was of 60 years of age and alive, then there was possibility of him or her getting recorded. And we have a vast reservoir of voice recordings of these personalities in the form of gramophone record and cylinders. Unfortunately, these are not preserved in any museum. And whenever we are deliberating upon the history of Tawaif, I have noted that we talk about three central characters. One is Begum Akhtari Bai, Faizabadi. The another character is Gohar Jan. And the third character we refer to is Umrao Jan Ada. Barring that, perhaps we have forgotten the history. And it is really unfortunate that despite their presence, we don't know about them. I tell you that barring the historical references here and there in books and literature, today we have the availability of their voices, which has been their integral part of their body. You can listen some Tawaif who sang before Wajid Ali Shah's court.
And you have that recording.
We have that record. I tell you that in 1874, a book was written by Daroga Abbas Ali, who was an engineer in Awadh, British administration. He wrote a book called Beauties of Lucknow. That book definitely is not available very easily, but it has got 32 photographs of those Tawaifs who were alive during those days. And fortunately, some of them have left their voice record, which are still in our collection. So rather than seeing the imitations or storytelling through Bollywood, we can listen to what was their actual music and how they sang. So it gives you a real source which needs no interpretation. It is equally unfortunate in our country that we all music lovers are sitting here, but if I happen to pose a question to you that who was the first Indian recorded when technology came, perhaps the answer will not come. Anybody? Anybody?
The first recorded...
First Indian commercially recorded. Yeah, this answer I was expecting because this misnomer has been spread and this is not correct. I just elaborate you. I want, because
ahead,
this is
please.
one of the aim of our coming over here to rectify. It was 1902 when the team of sound recordists from England, they landed in Calcutta. And Calcutta was the capital of India in those days. So William Frederick Gasberg, who was the sound recordist on behalf of the Gramophone and Typewriter Limited, they came to Calcutta and they were not knowing who to record. So they approached the police commissioner of Calcutta, and police commissioner directed them to go to Harrison Road, which was the road famous for dramatic performances. And we had the Classic Theatre, Star Theatre, Calcutta, estates are functioning there. So there were two Nautch girls of 14 and 16 years of age. Their name was Susimukhi and Faniwala, Bengali girls. They were the first to be recorded. But they were not as famous as Gohar Jan. So Gohar Jan, later on, due to her versatility, she was recorded next day and third day in 13 languages. So, and she was, by the way, a Gori Chambri girl because she was an Armenian Jew, later on converted to Islam. So she became the cynosure of public gaze and became famous. And even Gramophone Company said, first Nautch girl of India. So that gives us a very wrong impression that she was the first person who was recorded. Before her, another lady called Salabai Nautch girl. Her record indicates Salabai Nautch girl. And the third lady, Harimati or Hari Moti, it is written on the record, they were recorded. So this is the story I just wanted to clarify. Yeah.
So what were the circumstances, do you think, that led to the recording of the Tawaifs?
See, the first record, as I told you, first, second, third, fourth of India are in the voice of Tawaifs. They were very popular and they were patronized by the Rajas and Maharajas. And they were also the center of imagination of common mass. See, the Tawaifs were basically interacting with haves in the society. Have-nots had only imaginations about tawafs. Because they were not allowed to go in a mahfil or muzras and all. These were the basically things of riches. The poor people or middle class as such was not there, because middle class in India started emerging post 1857 when 3 of the universities were allowed to get started. That is your Mumbai, Calcutta and Madras. So we had the English education and we started getting the so-called bourgeois. So this particular, but yes, contemporarily in Bengal, because that was a seat of education, Tawaf Giri was a common thing among Babus. If you slightly deviate from the subject, after 1857, when the Indians and foreigners started getting inducted into Indian civil service, it was the Tawaf Giri which was basically harming the sentiments of Britishers as well as Babus very much, and it was a common practice in Calcutta to have concubines. It was not considered bad. So one of the reasons why ICS examination was shifted to London Salisbury was this, due to Tawaf Giri.
Wow.
And I belong to civil services. I am a 82 batch of IRS. So our forefathers, somehow, they were bad named due to this, and the center of examination was shifted for ICS to London. So the point is that at that time it was quite a prevalent practice. Before 1857, if you read some of the historians, they say that it was a pre-Nabobization period when during East India and other British companies who came to India as trader, they were imitating the Indian style. You see, if you see any movie, you'll find Jardoji work on the army uniforms. This was basically imitated from the Nabobs and all. It was not the British way. But post 1857, when the Crown took over, after the first war of independence, then British ways were imposed on Indians. And the sign of civility was wearing a black suit, which was served by our legal fraternity first. All the lawyers, they started wearing the black suit because this was the sign of civility. But 1857 is the cutoff time. Post 1857, what happened that just after 10 years, lot of British army people started coming India, and they started controlling the Indian territory. And they needed women as a sex partner. So Japanese and Indian girls were brought in, and one of the panelists were saying that the red light, lal batti lagate the. Actually, there was a concept which was introduced, which was called as lock hospitals. In 1863, there was a gentleman whose name was Fabre Tondre. He was a health officer. He, for the first time, introduced that the prostitutes which are getting supplied to the British soldiers must be medically checked. And it was made a compulsion in the cantonment areas, and only those women were kept there who were medically checked. And they were not permitted to mingle with the outside world. So there was a huge uproar, and the then social reformer, Keshav Chand Sen, he made the purist leader in England. England Europe as such was having 3 awakenings. And by 1880, there was an awakening which was the 3rd awakening. And purist movement started in England. And Keshav Sen met a lady called Josephine Butler to impress upon that this is an exploitation of women. So now maintenance of medical things and everything was also very costly. So the then British government thought to impose taxes. But at that time, Lord Ripon was there who did away with that. And slowly, they introduced legalization as well as criminalization of the act of prostitution in India. So if you go to the Indian history, it was a vice in the Jain period, even Buddhist period. It was considered bad, but it was not crime. If you read Arthashastra of Kautilya, you'll find if you are prostituting with a woman, and if you kill the woman, then you have to pay some fine. But if the woman kills you and she is a prostitute, then she'll be drowned in the water and she'll die. That is our Arthashastra, Kautilya's version of the Magad and that period.
So I need to understand. So
Yeah.
we are talking about the pre-recording ambience.
Pre-recording phase was like that,
right?
And at the time of recording, like we heard about All India Radio and all these things were not there. Nautch Girls music was very famous. HMB called a Nautch girl, Gauhar Jan, as the first dancing girl of India. And her records were very popular.
Largely sold all over.
Today, if we restrict our collection of recordings from 1902, how the commercial recording started, up till 1920 and 30, we get not less than 300 to 400 characters, by and large the Nautch Girls, whose name is not known to our people, but their voice survived.
Right. Vijayji, what do you think was the need of the Tawayafs to record their voices? When the technology came in for the gramophone technology, the wax cylinder before that, H. Bose had already recorded on wax a lot of Banaras Tawayafs. What do you think was the need?
One was certainly money. There was a lot of money involved.
Money for whom?
The Tawayafs were paid very well.
And the
Some of them
company?
demanded good prices and they got it.
And the company and the agents
Yes, they
in
were
between?
ready. Yeah. They
So
were
money
ready
for
to-
everybody.
Exactly. Because it was a good economic module, you know. They made money, the record sold. On the other side, there was publicity, there was popularity added on.
For the
You know,
Tawayafs.
absolutely. If you look at in the north, I mean, my book deals with theater. And out of the 10 women theater artists that I have written, several of them came from the backgrounds. All right. Now, say Jahara Kajjan, famous actress who recorded, and she insisted that her record labels and stuff should be printed in Germany.
In German?
Yes. So now you have her postcard. I have her postcards with me, with her pictures sitting with 2 puppies and dogs and all. And it says very clearly printed in Germany. You know, but she insisted. Now it was also a status. It's an issue of status. Now when you have a culture where you have so many Tawayafs, I mean hundreds of them, you know, no, and very few were the creme de la creme, you know. So not everybody could afford to go to a Gauhar Jan concert. Not everybody could afford to go to a Kajjan concert. Or a
Janki Bai.
Janki Bai or क्या नाम है इनकी फरीदा खानम की जो बड़ी बहन I wrote about. So anyways, so you have these people, they also had that status in the society that they needed to constantly uphold. So that was one side of the story why recording became so popular among this community. Not just even here, even in South India, you have some of the greatest stalwarts from that era who were very glad to record. But there were also those who did not want to record. Kesarbai Kerkar, a great example here in the north, who did not want to record. Veena Dhanamal in the south, one of the greatest musicians of the century, she said, my recordings will be played in all these barber shops and tailor shops. What rubbish. My music is not for them. It's very clearly for a very discerning audience. So I don't care if I don't record and make a big amount of money. If my rasikas are there with me, I decide who will listen to my music. So there was a certain, I don't know, you might want to call it arrogance, but yes, there were a whole lot of people who did not want to record either. So it was not like recording was the most popular, you know, ball game around the town.
So do you think also an invention like the gramophone record, it increased, there could be mass listening and it increased the reach of the artist also. With popularity, you know.
Yeah, but that's exactly what many of them didn't want. You know, the lowly barber is going to listen to my songs. That was the attitude. You know, so that's why they were very clear. In fact, there were families have fought because of having, you know, there'd be one gramophone record and on a Sunday or a evening Saturday, they'd play it loud. The whole village would gather around and sit and listen to these songs. And the Devadasi felt very offended that, you know, altu faltu ke log sun rahe mere gaane, nahi chahiye.
So
I want only informed rasikas to listen and appreciate my music. So she had her demands on one side. So it was not like recording was, you know, everybody's profiting out of it.
So do you also think the need arose for recording because the nobility were not supporting them as largely as they were earlier? The royal patronages
I
were
don't
shrinking.
think so. In fact, way till the independence movement and all the way, even after independence, you had several Devadasi families who had their patrons from either royal families or from families of big lawyers in the south and Madras especially. Some really big lawyers. I mean, Bala Saraswati, the greatest legend of Bharatanatyam, her husband was Shanmugam Shetty, the finance minister of India. I mean, why would you not want to have a patron like that? If so it was not, there was no such thing that patrons were not supporting them at some point.
Sharmaji, what do you think? The royal patronages were shrinking. Did that help?
No, actually, India is such a vast country that there are theories and philosophies which vary from different part. For different part, there are different stories and different socio-economic condition, even enlightenment. I'll give you example from Bengal. Bengal has been a seat of music. And if we go to 1880s, because Bengal was one place where the earliest form of modern drama and national drama movement started. We have the Bagh Bazaar concepts where Ardhendu Shekhar Mustafi, then Girish Chandra Ghosh, the Garrick of Bengal, and they all started the national theatre because they wanted that as a nationalist we should have a theatre. Then what happened that somewhere during 1880, there was a famous Tawaif, or you can say Baiji of Bengal, by the name Vinodini Dasi. So Vinodini Dasi, with her mentor Girish Babu, was performing a drama which was visited by, seen by our famous Ram Krishna Paramhans. So Paramhans came, and it was based on Chaitanya Leela was the drama. So after seeing, Paramhans became very, very influenced, and he came on the stage and blessed Vinodini as well as Girish Babu. So thereafter, the perception of Bengali people totally changed, and Michael Madhusudan Dutt was one of the first proponent who advocated use of tawaifs for their actings on the stage, which was definitely not supported by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. But that was one turning point in Bengal when a lot of ladies, they started participating, coming from these backgrounds, and they were respectable people. If you go to other part of India, the stories slightly differ. So, but what happened that here we have to see that why these tawaifs, as tawaifs recorded their music in gramophone, one of the reason lies in 1880 to 1890. As I referred the Puritan movement, when it started, we had the social reformation movement in India. In 1880, it all started from Madras and spread all through India. And letters were written to Viceroy of India, as well as Governor General of India, that you please don't participate. A meeting at that time, when Lord Dufferin was going to participate in one of such notches, was cancelled. So there was a huge pressure on people organizing such dances and participation of British officials and bigwigs. Because it had become a practice right from the very beginning, from Warren Hastings' time, that nautch, because Britishers, when they came to India, we don't have electricity. So there was no television, there is no other form of entertainment. So they started watching nautch, whether they understood it or not. And the founder of Sobha Bazaar, Raja Navkishan Bahadur, who was instrumental in getting Britishers win and over Calcutta, he was organizing such nautches for them. So it was a fashion, but this 1880 to 1900 movement of stopping this on moral grounds, that created a big problem. And okay, some of the very rich Baiji or who had the patron, they had no financial problem. But many songstresses, gramophone helped them first to spread their talent among common masses. You can use a word, mass mediatization. Gramophone was a greatest leveler. It flattened the world of tawaifs with other musicians. If you go to any organization, okay, you come from back door. That was not there in gramophone. Gramophone always welcomed, you come by the front door. And they recorded, And not only that they recorded such musicians, tawayafs, they gave the name of their patrons also. We have records where it is said, Miss so-and-so, court musician of King so-and-so.
Yes,
Yeah.
we have records.
We have records. For the males as well as females. We have the records where Tagore's family has patronized. And their name is written, Pradyut Kumar Tagore, Jyotendra Mohan Tagore. All those kind of things are there. A lot of rajas and patronizing such people. So we don't have this problem. It was the gramophone or the technology which was a great leveler. It flattened the world of Tawayef as musician versus so-called enlightened musicians. They were on the same plank.
Lovely. So
And it gave them the money. Because for one session, Gaurajan was getting 300 rupees. And for one evening, and for one recording, Janki Bai Chappan Churi was getting 3,000 rupees. And we had in South, Coimbatore Thai was one of the highest paid.
3,000, that's over 100 years back. And yeah, you want to add something?
I'll just add to the thing of, in fact, the people who were against it were the entire new nationalist movement. Mahatma Gandhi was vehemently against it. He wrote, there are editorials in Young India
Against what?
against the Tawayefs.
Okay.
What he said, see, they all wanted to be a part of the nationalist movement. And then, he said, but ye to nachne wale, gaane wale hain. Yes, they can't be a part of this. They went and drowned their instruments in the Ganga. Here we are ready to give up our profession in service of our country. Now you accept us. Mahatma Gandhi has written open editorials saying, these women steal virtue. They should not be a part of the nationalist movement. Okay, this is the father of the nation. So, so this is the, so the kind of society that was against their participation into mainstreaming, was not era, but, coming down from Gandhi level, then you can see the kind of impact it has had.
Yeah. Gandhiji is also responsible for not endorsing films.
No.
If films...
I'll slightly differ with this. Actually, the first group of Tawayefs met Mahatma Gandhi in Kakinada. Yeah. And subsequently in West Bengal, at that time it was not West Bengal, in Bengal, Barisal, the second group met. They requested Mahatma Gandhi for induction of them in the National Congress. Mahatma Gandhi, in fact, was very, very concerned with their plight. But he said that you have to leave this profession and you have to join the main stream of Congress. You can't be an office bearer by being a prostitute side by side. So the question was, then what is the economic alternative? Because if somebody is having a profession for the sake of earning the bread, then there should be some alternative. So he had suggested that you weave khadi, join the mainstream, but you weave khadi. And in 1930s, what happened that after 1990, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre and post-Hunter Commission's report, Indians got totally disenchanted, and Mahatma Gandhi, between 1920 to 1930, undertook a massive all-India tour. So during that tour, these incidences have happened. And thirdly, he went to a place nearby Varanasi, where Husna Jan, we refer to. Husna Jan, who was also called Sarkar, but actually she was the chief of the Tawayef Sangh of Kashi. So Husna Jan approached through somebody to Mahatma Gandhi. But again, the condition was that you have to quit this profession to join the Congress, and you start living a nice life. If you want to marry, you marry, but otherwise you dedicate your rest of the life to the service of the nation. And for economic alternative, you start weaving khadi, और वो तकली सूत काटने के लिए उन्होंने सजेस्ट किया था. And you'll be surprised that Husna Jan was a very strong character. So she said that, okay, since we cannot have this alternative, and many of us cannot leave this profession, so what we promise that wherever we go for doing the mujra, first 2 lines we'll sing a national song. And she has delivered an electrifying lecture. First thing, if you read that lecture of hers, you will not believe that this is being given by a Tawayef. because my panelists have already told that they were very literate and all. Basically, literature imparted to them was imparted privately. When this English education came in India, as I told you, 1875, our institutions were not permitting even the sons and daughters of Tawaiffs to study. There is a famous Hira Bulbul case of Calcutta, when the son of a Tawaif was given admission in Calcutta University and he was removed from the college. And that became a big story in Calcutta in those days. So literature or being literate doesn't mean that they were literate and having the education, which today we have.
Right, it was by the standards of the day.
And Husna Jan's lecture, 3 pages lecture, has been published in a book called Varvadhu Vivechan, written by Pandit Sudhadhar Dev Sharma. Again, a rare book where you can read this. And she advised all her Tawaifs to go to Vidyadhari Devi, who was a bit knowledgeable, to guide them or teach them nationalistic song. So 1930 onwards, Banaras Tawaifs started singing nationalistic songs before singing any Mujra song.
We'll go a little behind from 1930, about 25 years back, and I'm going to play a track from a gramophone record. We'll hear Achan Bai. Mark the beginning announcement. We'll just play a little of it and we come back to our discussion just to break the monotony. Can we have Achan Bai, please?
Achan Bai ka gana, gramophone record.
So you can hear the primitive recording, and the harmonium is so loud, you know, it's almost drowning the singer's voice. And there is an announcement in the beginning that there is a gramophone recording coming your way. Coming back to that, Gramophone Company of India, which kind of monopolized the music record scene in the coming years also. So do you think the recordings and records of artists who are Tawaifs, like Gauhar Jan, Malka Jan, Janki Bai, do you think it encouraged other Tawaifs to record as well?
Yes, we have, as I told you, we have not less than 500, especially in my collection, and different names. And they start right from some of the Tawaifs, as I told, Wajid Ali Shah era, like Hasso Jan. Now, her photograph is appearing on Pinterest also. We had Nanua and Bachua, a Tawaif in Banaras, Kathak. They studied from Thakur Prasad ji. Their voice record, especially Nanua as Nani Jan of Lucknow. We have records of grandmother of Siddheswari Devi.
Grandmother of?
Grandmother of Siddheswari Devi. Choti Maina Bai. Choti Maina Bai was of the tradition when in Banaras Ganges, when the floatils used to have the Tawaifs dancing, and it was a Budhwa Mangal, that is the birth. Budhwa means Lord Shiva. So Shiva's birth and next Mangal, or the previous Mangal, there used to be a festival when on the boat boat is floating and whole night the Tawaifs will sing and it will go up till Ramnagar. So Choti Maina used to sing on that. Her voice recording is available, though hardly one piece, made by a French company. Then, of course, we have records of like Haidari Bai of Sikandrabad. Now, my friend from South India should not confuse, it's the Sikandrabad of South. This is Sikandra, no, not Pakistan. This is Sikandra near Agra. And at the bottom it is written UP, not Uttar Pradesh, United Province. Then, like you said, we talked about Nimmi. Nimmi's mother, Wahidan Bai. Wahidan Bai of a recent origin. We had a Wahid Jan of Agra. So her records are available. Then a number of, like some of the Tawaifs, their records are there. They come having the same name but from different places. Like we have Wazir Jan of Pune, then Wazir Jan of Banaras, then Wazir Jan of Karnal. We have Husna Jan from Banaras. We have Husna Jan from Gorakhpur, Ghazipur, then Husna Jan from Saharanpur. If you go near Lucknow, there is a place called Sandila, which is very famous for laddus. So there is a Tawaif Ajmat Jan of Sandila. Okay. There are Malkas. Now, Gohar Jan's mother was Malka Jan.
Badi Malka.
Badi Malka, who was basically an Armenian Christian, later on converted to Islam. And her records are there. Then Malka Jan of Vagra, we heard during discussion, Malka Jan, another Malka Jan, Pukhraj. There is a Malka Jan Bhengi, one-eyed Malka Jan. Her records are there. There is a Malka Jan Harmonium Wali. Then there is a Malka Jan of Allahabad. There is a Malka Jan of Lucknow. So we have a series of Tawaifs having the same name, and their records are available.
So you feel they were very, very...
Yeah, very many.
Very
Gohar Jan, Calcutta, we know. There was a Gohar Jan who later on started participating with the Chandulal Shah in the film.
Miss Gohar,
Miss Gohar, Mamaji Wali. Then there was a Gohar from Parsi Theatre.
Parsi Theatre.
There is a Gohar Chulbuli. Gohar Karnataki, yes,
yeah.
but
Mrs.
contemporary to Gohar Jan, there was a Gohar Chulbuli, who was recorded by one German Ajanophone record, and there has been a Gohar Jan of Patiala. And going by your South Indian philosophy that we will not record, there is a Gohar Jan of Jaipur who never recorded. She was an artist with Guni Khana, Jaipur.
Vijayji, do you think, with the kind of Tawaif compositions being taken, absorbed by theatre, copied into films, what is your take on, the popularity of Tawaifs being recorded, encouraging other artists to record on gramophone?
I don't know if one Tawaif encouraged another Tawaif to go and record, but seeing the popularity of the one who is quite recorded, I'm sure it drove quite a few of them to go. He said there are so many 500s of them out here.
Right.
Even down south, you have hundreds of Devadasis who, little known names, and, it'll be some Kamala or something. There'll be 20 Kamalas if you go and look into the record. In fact, over here in Bombay, there is Chandavarkar, hai na unka naam?
Chanda Karwakar.
Yeah, so Chandavarkar's, his work on the Recording Society.
Oh, Suresh Chandwarkar.
The Suresh Chandwarkar. If you see the names, amazing how many of them went and recorded.
Correct.
And so many of them have the same name.
Correct.
So I don't know if, I think it was also quite a lot of it was economy driven.
Right.
And the excitement that somebody is listening to you slowly kind of crept in at some point.
So do you think, it being such a dynamic art, singing, dancing, do you think capturing it on gramophone record was kind of diluting its essence or diluting the performance?
Well, nothing can match a live performance, that's the fact. We have drama recordings. You can listen to the entire recording. It will go on and on, but it's different when you sit inside, a Grant Road Theatre here in Bombay and you watch it live with a live orchestra sitting in the pit. So that, of course, that experience is completely different. But yes, there were a whole lot of people who were enjoying even the recordings. And that's why you have full-length dramas recorded. Kichakavada part 1 to part 15. Damn it. My God. Who in their lifetime would want to sit down and listen to 15 recordings of a drama when you can go and probably spend an evening watching the play? But also then the dramas in those days had tons and tons of songs. They were all musicals.
Right.
Here, one more important thing I would like to say, that the recordings, say 100 years old, they give you a kind of a study which is called amic study and attic study. Amic means what music was 100 years back and what music is today. So if you listen to the recordings of 100 years, you can have a comparative study of progressive evaluation or devaluation of music. Like we have a evolution of music. If you go to the Vedic era, we don't have the Dhrupad, but it was Gram, Geet, Vandana and all it started, and then there was a progressive complication and later on simplification in musical history. So Alan Lomax has been a researcher who has given that in 100 years span, gramophone gives you the recordings what use, like Thumri. complex Thumri. Gauhar Jan's mother, Malka Jan, is considered to go for simplification of Thumri singing. So all these elements for the serious research scholar, the gramophone records provide you a repository of how a particular thing was rendered earlier and how it is rendered now and what is the difference, number one. Number two, it also gives a very rich lyrical contents which we have missed. There has been poetry, we have been very rich. See, Fox Strangway, he came to India in 1911 and he has written music of Hindustan. He has commented at one place that what India has forgotten, total Western music is equivalent to that. So we had from 1,000 years so many lyrics which we have forgotten. And here I quote and remember the Jamindar of Lalgola state of Bengal, who compiled a voluminous book called Music Rag Kalpadrum. It has more than 2,000 lyrics existing some 100 years back, which has been compiled and written. So gramophone records are basically not merely an object to be thrown. Today, we all recognize e-books. They are 100 years old books. That is voice books. You have the history embedded in them. They are the historical documents, unfortunately, unpreserved in this country.
So the V-books or the gramophone records, this whole culture started in the first decade of the last century. So what do you think were the hesitations from the Tawayefs to record? Like Sundarabai has gone on document to say that at first, in the earlier times when I used to sing, I used to feel that my voice is being drained away by the horn because they used to sing into the horn. There was no microphone. Do you think of other such hesitations or any apprehensions that the artists, particularly
No,
Tawayefs?
in the beginning the technology was that whenever you are singing, it were the indentures which were made on the medium, and then how deep is the indenture, is the clear, how clear is your voice. So if you see the early recordings on brown wax cylinders, which is extinct in case of India, and few I have written the book, The Wonder That Was Cylinder. At that time, the trumpets or band recordings were more and more there because they were leaving their indentures.
Louder instruments.
Louder. And at that time, we don't have the technology to replicate. So at a time, some 8 to 10 horns were kept, and you have to sing in louder voice, so 10 recordings at the best can be had
masters,
at a time.
10 masters.
Yeah, and in case of gramophone records, it was one master was made and multiple copies were made. Before 1915, it all were going to Germany, Hanover, for getting copied, from master copies to daughter copies, and getting distributed in India. In 1915, they started the Sialda factory, and many of the foreign contemporary multinationals who recorded, like Pathé, Nicole, then Beka, all those things were recorded, and they were getting processed from France or Germany, coming back to India and getting sold. So another thing was there that what was the time period for recording? It was 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes. So Indian classical music in 3 minutes, you cannot have the Vilambit and Drut and everything. So that was also a constant. People were feeling that we cannot do justice with our entire elaboration in music. But this also provided people opportunity to master their art and concise it in 2.5 minutes with giving best of them. So it has the advantage and it had disadvantage both. That also made some people to be hesitant. And I remember, and I quote Gassberg, that many a times, many of these people were such a senior musicians that everywhere when Gramophone Company, they started a recording studio in Calcutta. And elsewhere, wherever they went, they used to have the tent. And people had to be in line. So a very rich musician, or he was considering it is beyond his respect that he goes and stays with in the line. Secondly, that patrons were not permitting. See, patrons were not permitting. And thirdly, which is very important, that we did not support such cause. We as Indian failed. I tell you the example, in 1918, in Delhi, there was an All India Music Conference, and at that time it was proposed that we should have a national music institution. Bhatkhande ji was heading, and Nawab of Rampur was its president. with the due permission of Nawab of Rampur, the Muhammad Khan, who was the only person, last man in the lineage of Tansen, was alive in Rampur, and his permission was granted that he was a repository of Dhrupad Dhamar and Hori, so his recordings should be done. But due to paucity of fund, we did not record. Mind it, gentlemen, in 1888 or 90, Germany, America, they had their national sound archive. Even after lapse of more than 100 years, we don't have it today.
Talking of getting recordings into a 3-minute format, one of the greatest and the foremost artists in India was the great Zohra Bai of Agra, whose LP I'm holding. She formatted how to put a 3-minute to good use in recording classical music, which was later followed by the likes of Ravi Shankar Ji, Pandit Narayan Rao Vyas. I'm going to quickly go through the last point. What if this technology had not come in the 1902 onwards? What would have happened to the Tawaiffs? Would you think there would have been a faster deterioration? Quickly, we'll go through this. Vijayji?
Well, what if there was technology when Kalidasa was around or when Jayadeva was around? We would have had authentic recordings of Gita Govindam and Meghadutam.
Beautiful.
Right? So that's how I look at it. That I think they were there at a time and place when this recording facility started. And whoever did it, thanks to all these people, companies from outside, that we still have this last trace of something. And I think it is in that little strand of 2 minutes, 3 minutes voice, they still live on.
Right.
That's how I like to look at
Wonderful.
it.
Wonderful. Was that a good session? I'm sure it's evoked some queries from the audience. We can take them quickly, 3 or 4 of them. Yes. Can you hand over the mic, please?
Hi, I'd just like to know if you could tell us about any Tawaiffs who ended up becoming actresses, whether for film or theatre.
Tawaiffs who became actresses. Would you like to tell them?
Yes. See, when you are saying Tawaif becoming actresses, you mean actresses of film? Hello?
Yeah, many. You mean
Actresses on stage or film?
Actresses of stage or actresses of film?
Both.
Both. Okay. See, if we go through because in India, different region has different history. Like in Maharashtra, it was not permitted for a very long time. When Dadasaheb Phalke started making his cinema, it was very difficult. Males were to be drafted for acting as a female. But if you go to Bengal, in Bengal, the credit goes to Levdov. When the British came and they started Shakespearean theatre, it was the Levdov who, for the first time being a Russian, came to Calcutta and started a theatre. And he got it translated into Bengali, The Disguise. In that, 4 of the Bengali women were given part coming from these backgrounds, L.O.K.C. and all. Okay, their names were also published in Bengal. Subsequently, it became a common thing that actresses coming from these grounds, they were participating on stage. One classic example, again, is of Star Theatre. Its owner, Gurumukh Rai, he patronized a woman, Vinodini, but later on changed the name to Star Theatre. Earlier, he promised that it will be on her name. So if you read Vinodini's Atma Katha, Amar Abhinetriyor Jivaner Katha, then all these things are elaborated. So this was a common thing that actresses or so-called Tawaiffs were participating on stage. Film came only in 1913.
Talking films.
Talkie came in 31. Silent came in 1930. Now if you see the silent era also, in Maharashtra the problem was that when Raja Harishchandra was to be produced, it was Salunke who was a male and he was asked to work as a female. But parallelly, if you see the silent film era of Bengal, then lot of these stage actresses like Tara Sundari, like you had some of the other like Sarojini, then Kusum Kumari, all these people, they were acting in the silent era film also. And here we get a record of a lady called Putli Bai, recorded in 1906 under Nicol. But Miss Putli acted in silent era. Gohar Jan also acted in silent era films, in few films. Not later on she discontinued. And somewhere she is confused with other Gohar who later on acted in film like Gohar Mamaji Wali. So we had a tradition. And actually, if you see the early silent era films, they were nothing but only filmization of what was acted on stage.
Dramas.
It was by and large drama, and mythology was dominating because we were undergoing
So there were
the
lots,
Renaissance.
lots. To answer your question, lots.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Next question.
In my reading, I remember coming across the fact that there were a lot of Mughals who came to India and destroyed temples. And I believe this is something Sitara Devi had shared with me when I interviewed her years ago, that the Devdasi had no option but to become a court entertainer and evolve into a Kathak dancer or a Tawaif. So I'm wondering about that connection with what happened when the temples were destroyed.
Well,
You know.
I know. Yeah, I know. In fact, I knew Sitara Devi quite well, and we spoke about this. The thing is that even the art form slowly changed. You know, it was a temple art form. From there, it reached the courts, and from there, it reached the proscenium. Now, the content changed. You could sing. I remember this is Sitara Devi only giving an example, saying how when it changed from the temple to the court of the Nawab, you could no longer dance about Rama and Krishna and Ras Leela, but then you had to keep it. So according to the Natya Shastra, you selected the hastas. So, you know, in Kathak you have this, which is quite common, which is the Mora Mukuta, you know. And when they do this, and when, you know, you have this, so you had it subtly coded into it. You know, so this way the art form retained its essence, but it was not necessarily being performed in a temple or so. From the court it came to the proscenium now. Now here on a stage in a modern setting, how are you going to relate to the Gopika dancing about Krishna? You know, so it was maybe yes. One reason was when the temples were plundered and invaded by the Muslim invaders. That would be only one example, but that is not all of it. Even the dance form evolved over a period of time. The costume evolved over a period of time. The lyrics evolved over a period of time, and I think that is the natural course for any art form, for that matter, because we no longer live in the times of rajas and such patronage. So I don't see a reason why the art form should not evolve as well.
Wonderful. Any more questions? Yes. And then first row, please. Okay.
I think the discussion is extremely interesting. I just wanted to know, how was the career chosen? Was it chosen by the girl, or was it the family who decided, or who would choose that a person became a Devdasi or chose the career of a Tawaif? And after that, who funded the training of that art and culture and music?
Well, it was a matrilineal system. The mother, the daughter, the grandmother, it just went on one after the other. There was no pick and choose. If there was a girl in the house, the girl meant business. As simple as it is. In fact, Devadasi families, even in the south, they mourned when there was a male in the house. Oh God, on good for nothing fellow has been has born in this house now, you know. Yeah. Why was it not a woman? God has not blessed us with a woman. At least you could have continued in the profession. Because you see, they didn't look at it as a profession. They looked at it as a service. They looked at it as a seva to the God, because they were Nitya Sumangalis. So there's a very different thought also behind that sort of rationale what they were thinking. You know, it was not, and who trained, of course, it was all in the house. They were all extremely talented people.
Mm-hmm. But I'll further substantiate here. As you asked about the origin,
Yeah.
basically this was a religious brainwash from the today's perspective. Many people in those days, the death rate was tremendous, you can say very high. In 1902, average expectancy in India for male was 20 years and female was 22 years, which is today now 60. So a lot of people at the time of childbirth and all were dying. So it was put in the mind of women and the family that if you have a safe delivery and it is a girl, I will dedicate it to the temple.
Okay.
So this all started like that. Another thing, a question was raised by madam that what was the difference between the Tawayaf and the Devdasi. In Devdasi, suppose a child is dedicated, then temple used to look after and award her some land, etc. So that land earning was her earning, and if her daughter is there, and if the daughter continues as what you call Devdasi, then this property passes on. Otherwise, that was one difficulty. But what happened, this is called child abdication. So we must remember here one lady who was the first doctor in Madras and first legislative member also of Madras, Dr. Muthulakshmi Reddy. Muthulakshmi Reddy was, before independence, thrice he raised this question of anti-abdication. There's a child abdication bill for removal. And you must appreciate that it was the Mysore Maharaja who in 1909 for the first time banned Devdasi system from Mysore. Mysore was a very famous state, but they banned in 1909. And later on, after independence, only in 1947, we stopped this. Otherwise, people were out of, you can say, dharmandhata, out of superstition. The ladies used to go and dedicate their girls in the temple who were compelled to live like a Devdasi. Many of them were a divine prostitute.
That is Devdasi. And what about Tawayaf?
Tawayafs, as I told you, that think of India where all kind of vices were prevalent. India in British period or prior period, it was a country of haves. The haves, have-nots had no life in India. So your women folk, the social reality was that today if somebody is raped in one of the remotest corner of India, immediately there will be a news flash and police will be acting. Who was active in a Jamindari system if a poor woman is raped? So there were many deteriorated social conditions which compelled people. I give you a classic example of a Tawayaf, Janki Bai Chhappan Chhuri. Janki Bai's Chhappan Chhuri's father, they belong to Yadav community near Varanasi. Her father left home, okay, and when she was a child. Her mother had an illicit relation with a sepoy, and once she saw the sepoy and her mother in a compromising position at the age of 6 years. So she was stabbed 64 times. She was a very ugly looking woman. That's why she was called Chhappan Chhuri. But many people by names will think that very sexy, Chhappan Chhuri. This is a confusion, but this is the story. Later on, the mother, they migrated, they were dying of hunger. So the mother converted her into a prostitute. Okay. And she, after becoming a prostitute, she was a very good singer. She converted to Islam. She was given a lot of property. And she created, as somebody was asking why Hindu, why Muslim, she created a, you can say, organization where she put her money. It was a welfare organization. And Hindu, 5 members were there. Hindus, Muslim, one caste, one Brahmin, like that to look after. And in Hindu festivals, as well as Muslim festivals, the money used to go from her, this. Even now, that is registered with Lucknow Waqf Board.
You have a similar story in
Sir,
Balamani of the South. She was a Devadasi, one of the first actresses of Tamil drama, I'm sorry. She adopted 80 Devadasi girls, trained them in acting and singing and dance so that they don't have to go into prostitution. They can live by their art form. She built a Kalyana Mandapam. It is still there in Kumbakonam if you go. She said, I know nobody else will give a hall for this girl to get married. I'll build a damn hall. Even till today, 100 years later, the hall exists. And many of those girls who trained under her became great actors later in Tamil cinema and Tamil drama.
thank you, sir. I think it's been a very interesting male gaze on the Tawayaf and the Devdasis. We have spoken about how they came to be from live performers to recording artists, and I'm going to play one last recording of 30 seconds of a Tawayaf who's still alive, and we have her recording. We'll play Ahmadi Begum Chopra, please. Just 30 seconds. It's a ghazal, just to end on this nice note.
शर्मा गए लजा गए दामन छुड़ा गए शर्मा